10 years later, I, who had been driven out of the family, made a powerful comeback. When the true young master of the Clark family returned, I, the fake one, was swept out the door. To be with that true young master, my wife, Victoria Bellwether, abandoned me, taking our son with her. 10 years later, my son found me playing chess in the park. His face etched with impatience, he said, "My mom told me to find you. Tomorrow is my coming-of-age party. Don't forget to come." "Oh, right. I heard you know Mr. Sterling from Jindy Group." "Is that true?" "The family company's finances are tight lately. Tell that Mr. Sterling to invest $500 million in our company to help us out. Got it?" In the park pavilion, Hayden Clark looked at me, thoroughly annoyed. Anyone could see the contempt and disdain he held for me. Arthur Sterling, playing chess with me, glanced at Hayden and chuckled. "Your son? Quite an interesting kid." I looked at the chessboard, made a move, and replied casually, "Spoiled rotten since he was a kid. Otherwise, he wouldn't have kicked me out with his mother back then." Arthur laughed. "Raising kids isn't easy. You can tell a lot by age 3. If they're not disciplined early, there'll be trouble later. Spare the rod, spoil the child, as they say. You need to be strict." I shot him a look, retorting irritably, "Why don't you try saying that to your own daughter? See if your precious, headstrong girl doesn't tear you a new one." Arthur huffed. "That's different. My daughter is my own flesh and blood. I can't dote on her enough. How could I possibly hit her?" As soon as he said that, Hayden exploded. He knocked over our chessboard and pointed a finger right at Arthur's nose, cursing loudly. "Damn old man, what did you say?" "Say it again if you dare." If I hadn't held Arthur back, Hayden really would have hit him. I frowned at the furious Hayden and said calmly, "All right, you can go back. I'll be at your party tomorrow." Hayden snapped irritably. "If my mom hadn't made me come find you, I wouldn't want you anywhere near my coming-of-age party. And don't forget to talk to Mr. Sterling from Jindy Group about investing in our company, otherwise don't bother showing up tomorrow either." Before I could respond, Hayden glared fiercely at Arthur, threatening, "Damn, old man, don't let me see you again, or I'll beat you up every time I do with that." Hayden stormed off angrily. Arthur picked up the overturned board and pieces from the ground, smiling at me. If that kid knew I was the big boss of Jindy Group, what do you think his face would look like? How about this? I'll go with you to his party tomorrow. Didn't he say he'd beat me up every time he saw me? Let's see if he dares to do it in public." I retorted irritably. "Don't stir up trouble." "I won't be attending the club meeting tomorrow. If those rascals ask, just say I have important matters to attend to. Don't you dare mention I'm going to the Clarks for that kid's party. Otherwise, who knows how much they'll laugh at me." After leaving the park, I returned to my villa. Inside, memorial plaques for my adoptive parents, Thomas and Mary Clark, were displayed. I lit incense sticks for them, gently wiping their portraits with a soft cloth, murmuring, "Mom, Dad, tomorrow is your grandson's coming-of-age party. It's a pity you can't see it. You never got to enjoy the happiness of having children and grandchildren around you before you were suddenly taken from us. Your departure hit me so hard. After you were gone, Julian Clark threw me out and Victoria Bellwether divorced me to be with him. Even Hayden regarded me with disgust and contempt, wanting Julian to be his father. I can let all that go, but I swear I will find the murderer who killed you, and I will make them pay. All these years I haven't given up searching for the culprit. I have a few leads now. Mom, Dad, just wait a little longer. I am the adopted son of the Clark family, though not their biological child. My parents loved me dearly. In my 20s, I married Victoria Bellwether. After our marriage, Victoria gave birth to Hayden Clark. It was around that time that the true heir of the Clark family, Julian Clark, returned. Back then, Julian was adept at disguising himself, winning my parents' favor, and I treated him well too. After all, I felt I owed him for taking his place and enjoying the Clark family's wealth and status for over 20 years. I wanted to make it up to him. However, I never imagined that beneath his hypocritical facade lay such a vicious heart. He framed me, secretly courted Victoria, deliberately spoiled Hayden, and repeatedly bad-mouthed me to my adoptive parents. Victoria and Hayden gradually grew cold towards me, even beginning to despise me. Fortunately, my parents saw through Julian's ill intentions. After sternly reprimanding him several times, he behaved for a while. But then, when Hayden was 8, my parents died in a car accident. The driver responsible was never found. After their deaths, Julian inherited their estate. The first thing he did was strip me of all my positions at the Clark Corporation and throw me out of the family home. Victoria didn't hesitate either, coldly tossing a divorce agreement in front of me, forcing me out with nothing. My 8-year-old son Hayden even punched and kicked me, yelling, "I don't want you as my dad, I want Uncle Chin to be my dad, get lost." Julian wrapped his arm around Victoria's waist, mocking me, smugly sincere. "To put it nicely, you're the adopted son. To put it bluntly, you were just a dog the Clark family raised. What do you have to compete with me?" Victoria leaned against Julian, looking at me with arrogant disdain. "When I married you, it wasn't for you, but because you were the heir to the Clark family. Now that the true heir has returned, what right do you, the adopted son, have to grow old with me?" The vows of undying love we once shared became a complete joke in that moment. From then on, my heart died completely towards Victoria and Hayden. I left the Clark family, penniless, like a stray dog cast out. During that time, I truly despaired of the world. I sat by the riverside all night, several times feeling the urge to plunge into the rolling waters. But the faces of my adoptive parents kept flashing in my mind. The driver who killed them hadn't been found yet. I hadn't repaid their kindness in raising me. How could I give up and seek death? As I pulled myself together, ready to leave the riverside, an older man approached from nearby. He smiled and said, "If you really jumped in there, I'd be quite disappointed. I've been watching you all night, kid. Come on, let this old friend buy you some breakfast, and then we'll have a proper chat." This older man was Arthur Sterling, the big boss of Jindy Group, who later became my closest friend. He had been following me ever since I was kicked out of the Clark home. In his words, he saw my potential and wanted me to join Jindy Group in a senior position. I refused. I said, "I want to see if I can make something of myself, relying only on my own abilities, now that I've left the Clark family." Arthur admired me even more for that. With his help, I dove into the financial industry. Through my own abilities and hard work, I gradually rose to become one of the major players behind the scenes. Arthur and I became fast friends despite the age gap. He introduced me into the exclusive circle of top business clubs, filled with leaders from various industries. 10 years passed in a flash. Looking back, the Clark family, which once seemed so formidable, was now insignificant in my eyes. I never thought about taking revenge on Julian, Victoria, or Hayden. The only thing I couldn't let go of was the car accident that killed my adoptive parents. Over the years, I hired many private investigators and used countless connections to investigate the details of that accident. Just recently, I finally found some clues. I took out my phone and looked at a photo. It was a wedding picture of Julian and Victoria. They got married 10 years ago, right after I was thrown out. Hayden, dressed in a child's suit, stood beside them, the family of 3 smiling sweetly and happily. Julian had deliberately sent me this photo back then to provoke me. I murmured, "Was it him or her? Tomorrow I should finally know the answer. I said it before, whoever killed Mom and Dad. I will make that murderer pay a heavy price." On the day of Hayden Clark's birthday party, the Clark residence was bustling. 10 years had passed, but the old Clark estate hadn't changed much outwardly. Of course, this was just superficial. Over the years, under Julian's leadership, the Clark Corporation had shown signs of decline, heading towards sunset. If the Clark Corporation couldn't secure funding this time, the family might have to mortgage or sell this old estate to alleviate the financial pressure. Many guests had arrived. When they saw me appear, quite a few showed strange expressions. "Why is Sincere Clark here?" Obviously it's his son's coming-of-age party today. How could he not come? That's ridiculous. Everyone knows Sincere was kicked out by Julian, and Victoria divorced him. Even his son disowned him. Showing up now, isn't he here to cause trouble? Ever since Sincere was thrown out, there's been no news about him. Who knows what he's been doing all these years? I heard Sincere knows Mr. Sterling from Jindy Group. The Clarks invited him, probably hoping to use his connection to get in touch with Mr. Sterling. That's even more absurd. Who is Mr. Sterling of Jindy Group? How could Sincere possibly have connections with such a big shot? After entering the financial industry, I operated behind the scenes. Apart from the top figures in the exclusive club, few knew that the emerging financial mogul of recent years was me. I ignored the guests and their strange looks, heading to the buffet table to pick out some food. Just then, the man of the hour appeared. Victoria, arm in arm with Julian, walked towards me with Hayden. Hayden looked at me with disgust. "You're wearing that to my coming-of-age party? Are you deliberately trying to embarrass me?" I was dressed casually in clean, neat leisure wear. Though not comparable to the suits worn by other guests, I saw no problem with it. But Hayden clearly disapproved. In truth, even if I had dressed impeccably, they wouldn't have been pleased to see me. I said calmly, "Money's been tight lately. Can't afford fancy clothes and shoes." The disdain in Hayden's eyes deepened. Before he could speak again, Victoria interjected coldly, "Sincere, letting you attend Hayden's party is already giving you face. Don't cause any embarrassing scenes looking at this woman who once promised to grow old with me, who made vows of eternal love." I couldn't help feeling a twinge of emotion. I was too naive about love back then, failing to see Victoria's true colors sooner. Remembering how she had unhesitatingly thrown the divorce papers at me, remembering my despair wanting to jump into the river, I felt foolish. All the love I gave back then, consider it fed to the dogs. Julian, however, smiled faintly at me. "No news of you for years. I thought you couldn't handle the blow back then, and took your own life. After 10 years, we brothers meet again. Mom and Dad's spirits must be pleased." I looked at Julian coldly and said evenly, "I heard that after I was kicked out, the Clark Corporation under your leadership has been losing money year after year, almost to the point of selling this old family estate. What would Mom and Dad's spirits think, I wonder?" A flicker of cold anger crossed Julian's eyes, but he suppressed it. "What happened back then was a misunderstanding. I've thought it through over the years. I'm prepared to let you rejoin Clark Corporation, give you the position of vice president." Victoria chimed in. "Julian is generous and isn't holding the past conflicts against you. Stop putting on airs. Looking at the cheap clothes you're wearing, you must have had a hard time these years. Becoming vice president of Clark Corporation is definitely a windfall for you. Of course, there's a condition to becoming VP." I watched their double act coolly. "What condition? Let's hear it." Julian cleared his throat. "I heard you have some connection with Mr. Sterling of Jindy Group. Is that true?" I nodded, replying casually, "We're casual acquaintances. Met a few times." Julian's eyes lit up. "As long as you can get Mr. Sterling of Jindy Group to invest over $500 million in our Clark Corporation, the vice president position is yours." Hearing this, I almost laughed out loud. Forget the Clark Corporation now. Even at its peak 10 years ago, a VP position wasn't worth that much. $1 million investment for a Clark Corp VP seat? Did Julian think I was an idiot? Before I could respond, a commotion arose behind me. A portly, middle-aged man walked over, and many guests quickly stood up to greet him. Seeing the stout man, Julian's eyes lit up, and he immediately abandoned me, hurrying towards him. Julian's face beamed with a smile laced with subservience and flattery. "Mr. Grant, you finally arrived. Taking time out of your busy schedule for my humble son's party truly brightens up our event." Not just Julian, but Victoria and Hayden also wore fawning expressions when facing Mr. Grant. Guests whispered among themselves. "Although the Clark family has declined, even a weakened giant is still strong. Gavin Grant, the vice president of Jindy Group, is here too. Does this mean the Clarks have connected with Jindy Group? If so, the Clark family might be reborn. Everyone knows Jindy Group is loaded. If you can latch onto their coattails, even a pig could fly. Gavin Grant is just a VP in name at Jindy Group, without much real power. If it weren't for being Arthur Sterling's nephew, how could he get that position? Well, that's his skill too. If you're so capable, go find a wealthy uncle yourself. Mr. Grant was very arrogant. He shook Julian's hand briefly and said coolly, "Mr. Clark, I'm quite busy. Time is limited. Let's sign the contract first. After signing, I'll go back and talk to my uncle about investing in your Clark Corporation. How about that?" Julian hesitated slightly. Victoria quickly urged, "No problem. Let's sign now." She then whispered to Julian, "If we miss this opportunity, Clark Corporation is truly finished. This Clark estate isn't that useful to us anyway. Even if sold at a high price, it might fetch $100 million at most, not nearly enough for the company's finances." Mr. Grant offered only $10 million, much lower than market value, but as long as he can persuade Mr. Sterling to invest in our company, it's worth it. Hayden also persuaded Julian, "Dad, if our company goes bankrupt, this old house is useless. I don't want to live in poverty. You promised me a luxury car and a mansion after my party." Julian nodded firmly and smiled at Mr. Grant. "All right, since Mr. Grant has said so, I won't say more." Mr. Grant smiled smugly, produced a contract for the purchase of the Clark estate, and asked Julian to sign. I, who had been silent nearby, spoke up gravely. "This estate is the Clark family's ancestral property. Even when Mom and Dad were facing their toughest times, they never thought of selling it. Julian, he's only offering $10 million, and you're selling it? If the Clark ancestors knew about this, they'd probably turn over in their graves." Hearing this, Julian flew into a rage, yelling at me, "Sincere Clark, shut your mouth. You're just an adopted son. Who are you to lecture me? This ancestral home is my property. I'll sell it if I want. If you dare to babble again, I'll have someone beat you up and throw you out right now." Victoria and Hayden also glared at me angrily, as if I had ruined their fortune. Just moments ago, they hoped I could connect them with Jindy Group. Now, seeing Mr. Grant, they deemed me useless, discardable. Just like when they kicked me out years ago, so decisive they really are pragmatic. Mr. Grant glanced at me and snorted coldly. "Are you that adopted son, Sincere Clark, who was thrown out? You're not the one in charge here. What right do you have to interfere?" "Get lost," looking at the arrogant Mr. Grant, I sighed inwardly. Arthur had mentioned this Gavin Grant to me. Even though Grant was his nephew, Arthur found him quite annoying. If Arthur's late older sister hadn't asked him to look after Gavin before she passed, Arthur would have kicked Grant out of Jindy Group long ago. Seeing Julian quickly sign the contract to sell the ancestral home, I frowned at Gavin Grant. "Does Arthur Sterling know about you lowballing the price for the Clark estate? Doing this behind his back? Aren't you afraid he'll punish you later?" Grant became furious, glaring fiercely at me. He turned to Julian. "Mr. Clark, what this adopted son of yours said makes me very uncomfortable." Julian gritted his teeth, looking at me, and roared, "Sincere, are you deaf?" Deliberately provoking Mr. Grant, deliberately disrupting the cooperation between our family and Mr. Grant. You just don't want to see us Clarks doing well, do you? I shouldn't have agreed to let you come to this party in the first place, men. Break this guy's legs and throw him out." As Julian finished speaking, some Clark relatives approached me with hostile expressions. Victoria and Hayden glared, cursing, ready to attack me. Just then, an angry shout came from the entrance of the ancestral home. "Stop!" Following the shout, Arthur Sterling walked in, leading a group of people. The people behind Arthur were all top leaders in their industries and also members of our club. Seeing this, I rolled my eyes, exasperated. Today was the club meeting day. I had told Arthur not to tell those rascals I was coming to the Clarks today. Clearly, Arthur hadn't listened. He deliberately brought those rascals here to watch the show. Arthur and the others raised their eyebrows at me, all wearing wry smiles. Arthur turned to the pale-faced Gavin Grant and said coolly, "Mr. Grant, using my name to throw your weight around out here. Quite impressive." Gavin Grant, who just moments ago wore a face full of arrogance, now looked like a frightened rabbit, his bulky frame trembling slightly. He forced a smile, his voice shaky. "Uncle, why are you here too? I heard you mention the Clark estate before, thought you fancied this piece of land, so I wanted to acquire it quickly as a gift for you." Arthur took the purchase agreement, didn't even look at it, and ripped it to shreds. Arthur said coldly to Grant, "If the Clark estate went to auction, it might fetch over 100 million. You want to buy it for $1 million? If word got out, people would say our Jindy group bullies others and forces sales. Gavin, all these years you've been using your status as my nephew to misbehave and line your own pockets. Did you really think I was blind? Starting today, all your positions at Jindy Group are terminated. Get out." Fear crossed Grant's face. He stammered, "Uncle, Arthur cut him off coldly. "From now on, I don't have a nephew like you." Gavin Grant trembled violently, as if unable to withstand the shock. He couldn't catch his breath and fainted on the spot. No one paid attention to the collapsed Gavin Grant. All eyes were on Arthur Sterling. At this moment, Hayden Clark suddenly spoke, his voice trembling. You're the old man playing chess in the park yesterday?" "When Hayden came looking for me yesterday, I was playing chess with Arthur." Arthur had been wearing an old undershirt and shorts, holding a fan, looking completely disheveled, a stark contrast to his well-dressed, spirited appearance now. So it was normal that Hayden hadn't recognized him at first. Arthur smiled at Hayden. "You said yesterday you'd beat me up every time you saw me. I came uninvited today just to see how you plan to do that." Hayden panicked, quickly lowering his head, not daring to speak. Julian and Victoria, seeming to just snap back to reality, quickly said, "Mr. Sterling, our son is young and ignorant. He spoke rudely to you yesterday. We will discipline him strictly in the future. Please forgive us, Mr. Sterling." "Mr. Sterling, the child is young and doesn't know better. You're a bigger person. Please don't lower yourself to his level." Arthur ignored Julian and Victoria, turned to me and chuckled. I snapped irritably, "What are you laughing at? This old man, despite his age, sometimes acted like a child. Bringing those club rascals here today was purely to watch me make a fool of myself. The thought of them teasing me about this later made my teeth itch. But Julian and the others didn't know about my relationship with Arthur and his friends." Julian turned on me furiously. "Sincere Clark, how dare you? Who gave you the nerve to speak to Mr. Sterling like that? Apologize immediately." Victoria even raised her hand to slap me, screeching, "Sincere Clark, you dare disrespect Mr. Sterling? You're asking for death." Before Victoria's hand could reach my face, Arthur grabbed it firmly. Arthur narrowed his eyes at Julian and said coolly, "My young friend is joking with me. What business is it of yours?" Before Julian could react, Arthur looked at the stunned Victoria, his tone laced with contempt. "Stupid woman. Threw away gold with your own hands, only to pick up dog shit and treat it like treasure. Absolutely blind." Arthur's words left not only Julian and Victoria dumbfounded, but also stunned every guest present. Arthur threw an arm around my shoulder and announced cheerfully to the crowd, "Everyone, taking advantage of this fine day, let me introduce my young friend here. You all should know about the mysterious mogul Yan Qing, who emerged in the financial world these past few years, right?" Hearing this, many people in the crowd nodded and murmured in agreement. The titan who suddenly rose in the financial world. Anyone who knows anything about finance must know this mogul. I wonder what that financial giant is like. I only heard he seems quite young, but few people know what he looks like. I heard he's a member of the Dragon Shine Club, recommended by Mr. Sterling himself. Only the top leaders in various industries can get into the Dragon Shine Club. What does Mr. Sterling mean by saying this all of a sudden? Arthur chuckled and pointed at me, declaring to everyone, "This young friend of mine is that most mysterious financial mogul rumored about these years, Yan Qing, Sincere Clark. They are one and the same." This statement dropped like a bombshell, causing ripples of shock. Gasps filled the air, with Julian and his family reacting with the most shock and panic. Julian's eyes widened. He blurted out, "Impossible, how could that financial mogul who rose so quickly in just a few years be this adopted son?" Victoria, flustered, spoke without thinking, "Is there some mistake? Or perhaps, Mr. Sterling, you're joking with us." Hayden stared blankly at me, speechless. Anyone with half a brain could see Arthur wasn't joking. After all, who was Arthur Sterling? Would the top business leaders he brought with him have nothing better to do than come here and play a prank on everyone? Seeing how casually I interacted with Arthur and the other top moguls, the way the guests looked at me gradually changed. From mockery, disdain, and contempt, their expressions shifted to awe, fear, and even a hint of sycophancy. Arthur looked at Julian, a half-smile playing on his lips. "Mr. Clark, helping Clark Corporation overcome its difficulties is actually very simple. Just ask Sincere for help. If he agrees to help you, Clark Corporation will not only survive this crisis but might even soar." Arthur's words made Julian's face flush red and pale by turns. It was Julian who had personally thrown me out of the Clark family. Just moments ago, in front of Gavin Grant, Julian had roared at me, threatening to break my legs. Now, asking him to bow his head and beg me, in front of everyone, was indeed a loss of face he found hard to swallow. Victoria spoke up at this point, her tone intimate. "Sincere, we're family. Let's not make things too ugly. Clark Corporation will be left to your son eventually. Helping Clark Corporation is helping our son. You're so wealthy now. Injecting a few $100 million shouldn't be a big problem, right?" I glanced at Victoria. She looked at me seductively, her eyes burning with a certain heat. Could this woman be thinking about getting back together with me? When she and her son abandoned me back then, they were utterly ruthless and decisive. I ignored Victoria and turned to Julian. "Sell the Clark ancestral home to me. I'll offer a high price." "How about $200 million? Julian's mouth twitched. $200 million is far from enough to solve the company's crisis. How about you? I cut him off calmly. "I've calculated. If you sell the ancestral home to me and sell off your other assets, you should barely be able to get Clark Corporation through this crisis. As long as Clark Corporation doesn't collapse, you'll still have the goose that lays golden eggs. You should know which is more important. Even if the ancestral home is auctioned, no one will offer a higher price than me." "Of course, if you disagree, consider it unsaid," Julian quickly replied. "Sell, I'll have someone draw up the contract right now." Soon, Julian's assistant prepared the sales contract for the ancestral home. After reviewing it and finding no issues, I signed and transferred the funds directly. Having acquired the property rights to the Clark ancestral home, I felt a sense of relief, brought into the Clark family by my adoptive parents as a child. This ancestral home held too many memories. It was my childhood sanctuary. Now, it finally belonged completely to me after completing all the procedures for the transfer of the ancestral home. Julian forced a smile. "Brother, the family still has some other assets. Would you consider buying them all? The family supermarket chain and that shopping mall in the East District, if you want them for the sake of our brotherhood. I'll sell them to you at a discount. Just $600 million. How about it?" Was he trying to treat me like a sucker? Over the years, many of the Clark family's assets had been run into the ground by Julian, nearing bankruptcy and worth very little. The assets he mentioned, even if given away for free now, nobody would want them due to the mountains of bad debt attached. I didn't refuse. Looking deeply at Julian, Victoria, and Hayden, I said, "Answer one question for me and I'll take all those near-bankrupt assets off your hands. How about that?" Julian, Victoria, and Hayden immediately became excited, their eyes fixed on me eagerly. Julian urged, "Brother, what do you want to ask?" I took a deep breath. "Where were you when Mom and Dad had their car accident?" The moment I asked this, both Julian and Victoria stiffened slightly, their expressions subtly changing. Especially Julian, a flicker of panic crossed his eyes. Julian forced a laugh. "Brother, why bring that up again? Didn't I tell you before?" That day happened to be Hayden's birthday. You were too busy to spend time with him, so I took him and his mother to the amusement park. Victoria nodded quickly. That's right, we were at the amusement park that day. We rushed to the hospital as soon as we got the call about Mom and Dad's accident. Unfortunately, by the time we arrived, they couldn't be saved. Hayden didn't even get to see his grandpa and grandma one last time. As she spoke, Victoria feigned wiping away tears. I frowned at them, my voice deepening. I'm giving you one last chance. If you lie again, not only can I accelerate the collapse of Clark Corporation, but I can also make your family of 3 end up begging on the streets. The old Sincere couldn't do this, but Yan Qing, the current financial mogul, absolutely can. Don't think I'm joking. I'll ask you one last time, where exactly were you that day? Julian and Victoria still tried to argue, insisting they had taken Hayden to the amusement park. They weren't fools. When I asked the question, they must have sensed something, their gazes already holding a hint of wariness and fear. For years I hadn't given up searching for the truth behind my adoptive parents' deaths. I spent vast resources and manpower, finally finding clues leading to Julian and Victoria. I just wasn't sure which one of them was the true mastermind. I said calmly, since you refuse to tell the truth, prepare for bankruptcy and begging on the streets. Then I turned to Arthur and the other top moguls. My esteemed friends, please lend me a hand. For the next little while, let's target the Clark family. Arthur and the others laughed heartily, readily agreeing. Young friend, we've been waiting for you to say that. I've disliked this Julian Clark for a long time. If it weren't for giving you face, I would have moved against Clark Corporation long ago. He lacks the ability yet holds a high position, a sure path to ruin. Jealous of the capable, even a pig managing Clark Corporation would be better than this Julian. Don't worry, with us old brothers taking action, it won't even take a month to force Clark Corporation into bankruptcy liquidation. After Arthur and the others spoke, Julian and Victoria's faces turned ashen, their anger mixed with thick panic. Julian glared at me, roaring, Sincere Clark, you were raised by the Clark family. My parents raised you from childhood. Instead of being grateful, you treat our family like this. My parents' spirits in heaven will definitely not let you get away with this. Victoria added hastily, Sincere, you've achieved success now. Are you going to disregard the kindness the Clark family showed you? You repay kindness with vengeance. Who will dare to work with you in the future? Aren't you afraid of being condemned by everyone? Their words made the guest look at me with slightly changed expressions. Just then Hayden, who had been silent, suddenly spoke to me. Dad, the day Grandpa and Grandma died, Uncle Julian and Mom didn't take me to the amusement park. They left me alone at the park. They went somewhere. I don't know where, and only came back about 2 hours later. Hayden's words threw Julian and Victoria into simultaneous panic and rage. Shut up, you bastard whelp. What nonsense are you spouting? Both Julian and Victoria slapped Hayden. Hayden clutched his face, crying out, I don't want to beg on the streets. I don't want to live in poverty. I want to go with my dad. My dad is Sincere Clark. I am Sincere Clark's son. I was young and foolish back then after. Grandpa and Grandma died. I overheard you talking. Before Hayden could finish, Victoria and Julian clamped their hands tightly over his mouth. Julian looked like he wanted to strangle Hayden. He gritted his teeth at me. Sincere Clark, if you don't want to help us, fine. But if you dare to kick Clark Corporation while it's down, I will drag you down with me. I'll let everyone know what an ungrateful wolf you are. Just then I received a text message. It was from a private investigator I had hired. I looked coldly at the angry and panicked Julian and Victoria, my voice chilling. Who exactly is the ungrateful wolf? My adoptive parents' deaths. You did it, didn't you? My words shocked everyone present. Julian and Victoria turned even paler, blustering furiously. Sincere Clark, stop slandering us. How could we possibly do such a thing? You're spreading rumors. We're going to sue you. I took out my phone and showed the evidence sent by the private investigator to Arthur and the others. After seeing it, they all started cursing at Julian and Victoria. Julian and Victoria had been involved long before. Although Julian was the true heir, a significant portion of Clark Corporation's power was in my hands, which made Julian deeply dissatisfied. When my adoptive parents planned to write their will, intending to leave a part of the family assets to me, Julian's jealousy flared intensely. So, Julian and Victoria conspired, using some help from Victoria's family, the Bellwethers, to stage a car accident that resulted in my adoptive parents' deaths. The private investigator I hired had, through various clues and tracking down witnesses from the accident years ago, and by using certain special means to install listening devices in Julian and Victoria's car, finally confirmed that they were the true culprits behind my adoptive parents' murder. When I presented the evidence from my phone, the entire place erupted. In that instant, everyone looked at Julian and Victoria with disgust and contempt, shouting curses endlessly. Julian and Victoria still tried to deny it, but Hayden suddenly broke free, ran to my side, and said, "Dad, I can testify they were the ones who killed Grandpa and Grandma." I overheard them talking, discussing how they killed Grandpa and Grandma and about the help from Mom's family. Hayden recounted the details of Julian and Victoria's conspiracy, draining the color from their faces. Then Hayden looked at me pitifully. "Dad, I was young and didn't know better back then. I wasn't involved in killing Grandpa and Grandma. I'm your only son now that I've redeemed myself by exposing them. Can you forgive me for the mistakes I made back then?" I looked at Hayden with complicated emotions and sighed. "I forgive you. However, you've got one thing wrong. I'm not your dad. Julian Clark is your biological father." Hayden was stunned. The guests were stunned. Even Arthur and his old friends looked at me, utterly astonished. I told Hayden, "Before your mother married me, she was already involved with Julian Clark. You are their biological son. Otherwise, why do you think your mother divorced me so decisively back then? Why has Julian treated you like his own son all these years? Today you exposed your own parents. That's quite something. Consider this my coming-of-age gift to you. Do you like it?" Hayden trembled, looking at me with disbelief and terror. He stammered, "Dad, you must be joking." I ignored him and looked at Julian and Victoria, saying softly, "All these years, haven't you told the child about his origins? Or perhaps you were too ashamed to mention it, afraid your own biological son would look down on you." I only found out about Hayden's true parentage after leaving the Clark family. Over the years, while investigating my adoptive parents' deaths using numerous private investigators and connections, I uncovered some secrets about Victoria and Julian. Victoria had been involved with Julian even before she met me. Knowing this, I began to suspect whether Hayden was really my child. When Hayden was in middle school, I managed to obtain samples of his hair and nails and had a paternity test done. The results proved he wasn't biologically mine. Although Victoria and I were divorced by then, I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger and grief. It was also from that point that I started to suspect my adoptive parents' deaths might be related to Victoria and Julian. Now the truth was out. Saying all this publicly, I felt a weight lift off my chest. However, someone couldn't bear the blow. Hayden broke down first, rushing towards Julian and Victoria, screaming questions at them. Julian and Victoria stared blankly, ignoring their frantic son. They trembled, their spirits seemingly drained, knowing that after today, not only was the Clark fortune finished, but their own lives were likely over too. Hayden's 18th birthday party ended abruptly. Julian and Victoria were taken away by the police along with several members of the Bellwether family who had aided them in murdering my adoptive parents years ago. Before the trial could even begin, Julian committed suicide by banging his head against the wall in his holding cell. Victoria suffered a complete mental breakdown. Declared legally insane, she was being transferred to a psychiatric hospital when she managed to jump out of the moving vehicle and was struck and killed instantly by oncoming traffic. As for Hayden, his 18th birthday marked a turning point from a rich heir to a street beggar. Later, I heard he resorted to petty theft, fled to another state, was lured abroad with promises of big money, and not long after, his organs were harvested and his body dumped in the wilderness. After acquiring all the Clark family assets, I went to my adoptive parents' graves to pay my respects. Mom, Dad, your spirits in heaven can finally rest in peace. The wind blew, painting the sky with sunset hues. The clouds on the horizon formed the faint outline of an elderly couple, as if Mom and Dad were watching me with gratified smiles.